Rabbi, I'm so grateful for the hopeful framing that you've offered us at the end. And I have a question that I want to just ask you to wade in a little deeper with us around. I love that you've said that the rebundling gives us the opportunity to shape the kind of society, not just to rebuild religious life or religious institutions, but to shape the kind of society that we would wish for our children and grandchildren. And I wonder if you could say a bit more about the unique contribution or distinctive contribution that religious practice or religious community might lend to that. Why not just the public library?
It's a great question, and I truly appreciate it. I know that in my own life, I lived periods of time where I was largely secular, and I look back on that period of time, and I had great friends, and they were there for me through thick and thin, and I had a nice community, and I didn't really know what I was missing until I had that tremendous loss, until my father passed away. And so I think what's important to know, the way I see all of this, is not that everybody should become religious in this great rebundling. We're just going to sweep up all of the nuns and the nuns, and that they're all going to become religious in this big unified tent revival. Rather, I think religion has a place in society, an important place in society, and I think faith communities have an important place in society, but not the only one, right? They should be a part of a constellation of places and spaces that shape character, that give inspiration, that give information, right? Knowledge should not be confined to just the stream of your news feed. There should be other places to gain knowledge, to gain wisdom, to connect with people outside of maybe your age bracket or your demographic. Religion, I would argue, right, faith communities are one of the last places where you can encounter somebody who is of a different generation, right? Multi-generational community is incredibly life-giving. You know why? You know why? Because for a young person experiencing a crisis, if you're 13, 14, 15 years old, now, I don't want to downplay the lived experiences of someone in their early teens. I have a 13-year-old in the front row who will definitely let me hear it. But it is the equivalent of Adam on his first day. When you hit your first crisis, that can feel like the end of the world. That can put you in a place of despair. And to be in a multi-generational community, you know what it reminds you? You know what it tells you, what it reinforces for you? Oh, other people have had difficult times, right? Other people have gone through tough stuff. And maybe I can learn a thing or two from folks like that. There are actually all of these studies. There was a school in Sweden where they built a preschool that flowed into an early elementary school, and they built it on the same campus with a senior living facility. And they had shared programming, so they could sort of cross-pollinate through different programs and educational activities, and they planted a garden together, and they would do art classes. There were all kinds of things they could do together. And then they tracked the sort of general wellness of both communities. And it turns out that both communities, young and old, felt quite rejuvenated by this experience. And as those young people made their way through elementary school, where typically the national averages in Sweden would show that younger people would show higher signs of depression and higher stress, that actually it wasn't affecting them the same way. Right? What an incredible gift. So to answer the question, I think in an ideal world, this rebundling moment, this resurgence of faith is part of a broader constellation of newfound connections that are happening in third spaces that are not just driven by profit, right? That are driven by real desire for connection. I don't care if it's a block party or you're going to the mall or, maybe not a great example for, something that's not driven by profit, but that there are other places where people can go to connect with other people in intergenerational communities across diverse lines, especially across ideological bounds. And I think the better we can do that, the better shot our society, our world, our political structure, our government has a chance of, as our previous speaker said, of making it through a time like this.
Thank you. I just have to say, wow, y'all have really interesting questions. We could be here for a while. I have several questions here that are really about the broad context in which some of this unbundling, rebundling has taken place. I'm going to read this question as an example, but I have several others, but this pulls together several threads. They preface by saying correlation does not equal causation. Couldn't the decline in social fabric and mental health be more causally related to the use of social media rather than the decline in religious affiliation? And similarly, I have a question about the way in which the decline in the social fabric and mental health might otherwise intersect with the rise in the pervasive use of social media and our isolation from one another.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. I mean, anyone here read Jonathan Haidt? You read The Anxious Generation. It's alarming, right? The use of social media is alarming. We know that there are direct correlations between the use of social media and declining mental health among young people. You can ask my son, who's 13, if he has a phone yet. I'm sure it might be a more interesting lecture than the one that I just gave. And so, yes, that is absolutely connected. Now, ironically, the more connected we are, the more friends you have on Facebook, the fewer people actually will show up if you're sick. Right? The more connected you are, the less connected you are. And that's the irony of it, that we have this illusion of control. No, I can control my newsfeed. I don't like that. I don't like that person, what they had to say. I'm going to block them. I'm not going to follow them anymore. So we curate these worlds. We think we are the main actors in curating this world when it comes to social media. In fact, when it comes to all media, because now, right, all of our media inputs are selectively chosen for us through algorithms, which in some ways, right, the ChatGPT is like the new confessional. Right? What ChatGPT knows, and there are 700 million users every single day around the world, okay? What ChatGPT knows about the inner lives, especially of young people who are using it more, right, no priest in the world knows. Right? And then knowing with that knowledge, it's going to curate who you're going to connect to, what information you're going to get access to, and how you're going to engage with it, what you're going to do with it, what you're going to buy, and how you'll spend the most important thing you've got in this world, which is your time. It's going to determine all of those things. And what's the peak, right? Where are we at right now? In fact, the nadir, I would say, is that young people, Gen Z, up until 2 years ago, were streaming 23 hours of YouTube every single week. That's not including any other screen time. They were just 23 hours of YouTube every single week. So what it gave them is an illusion of learning. It gave them this illusion that they were being entertained, that they were content consumers, right? But at a certain point, then you become the content. And so what I would say is, I believe that these are deeply connected. Had religion not gotten completely written off by my generation, it wouldn't have left that vacuum for social media to enter into, right? What if I were getting my knowledge from a different place? What if I were feeling real, resilient, sustainable human connection from a different place? What if I had a sense of community in a different place? Would I have torn myself away and gone somewhere else to find it? But unfortunately, it was in that search, right? Nature abhors a vacuum, and that vacuum got filled up very, very quick. So we can say it's the chicken or the egg. Was it the decline of religion that caused the rise of Facebook? Was it the rise of Facebook that caused the decline of religion? We can play that game all day, but I think the fact that they coincided led 10 years later to us raising, the red flag here that these mental health crises are not to be understated. Right? We need to take them seriously. So I think the two are absolutely connected. And, if you want me back next year, I can do a 45 minutes on how much I hate social media. It'll be less interesting and much less inspiring. Yeah.
I want to ask two questions for you, not about Gen Z, but from Gen Z.
Oh, good.
I'm going to read two questions because I think they pair nicely together. The first question writer says, geriatric Gen Z here. if such a thing exists. I have grown up outside of and generally skeptical toward organized religion, yet everything you said today has resonated so deeply. How do I go about finding a faith community? And then another wonderful question, what about the people whose grandparents weren't religious or bundled and are entirely disconnected from organized religion?
I'll start with the first one, and then I'm going to answer the second one with a story that was recently published in Scientific American at the end of June. So the first answer is, how would I know what's the right place? I would say it's like you got to try the porridge first, right? So go to the place that feels, hey, maybe this one might be the right spot. Try it out. Go somewhere else. What I would encourage you to do is to not be afraid to be the first Gen Zer there. Right? If you go there and you don't see people your age, don't be afraid to step in. Right? I would also say a great sign that this is the kind of community that will adapt to who you are, what you bring, what questions you have, what yearnings your soul feels, is when you show up, are they going to ask a question about you? Right? Do they say, tell us about yourself? Or do they say, let us tell you all about ourselves? Right? And that might be a dead giveaway of what the kind of place is that you want to be a part of. So if they say, tell us who you are. I want to treat your stories like they are scripture. I want to treat your life like it's my liturgy. And if they can make you feel like that, like you were really created in the divine image and you have infinite value, well, then maybe that's a place where you're going to hang your hat for a little while. The other thing I would say about what past generations is this, and I know, no, I got time. Okay. I was like, do I tell you all about the moths in Australia? Yeah, I'm going to do it. So there was a study that came out at the end of June about these moths called bogong moths. I won't do a show of hands because none of you have heard of bogong moths, which means I can make up anything about bogong moths, and you'll say, that sounds about right. Yeah. Amazon is using them as delivery people. No. Okay. So the bogong moths, this is what was discovered. They are the first and only known invertebrate to navigate for their migration by the stars. Right? So monarch butterflies, what do they use to do their migration, the Great Migration? Anyone know? The sun. But bogong moths migrate at night. Now, the amazing thing about this discovery, one, is how they made the discovery. So billions and billions of moths make their way across Australia once a year. Right? And in fact, their end point is this system of caves. I think on the eastern side, they have to go over this large mountain range, and it's the system of caves where they end up, and you can't see the walls of the caves when these moths come through. It's a remarkable thing to witness. Now, researchers wanted to get a sense, well, how do they know where they're going? Because we never see them migrating at night. In fact, these moths, there's also a deep connection between the indigenous population in Australia and these particular moths, both as a source of inspiration and for those that reside near those caves as a source of food. The important nutrients are coming from the moths. So what they found is they captured a bunch of these moths, and they put them in a big kind of like stadium, I guess, like this, and they made the ceiling out of black felt cloth. And they projected like a planetarium up onto the ceiling to see where these moths are going to go. So they did an accurate planetarium, and the moths went due north, because that's exactly where they know how to go according to these stars. And then they switched it 180 degrees. You know what the moths did? They turned around on a dime. They turned back around. And then they just projected a bunch of light. I think just like scientists are a little cruel. They just wanted to mess with the moths. So what did they do? They spun in circles. They didn't know where to go. Right? And then they released them. They went back out into the wild, and they made their way to finish the migration. But here's the amazing thing about this particular story. Who taught the moths to know that they should navigate by the stars? Their parents die 3 months before the moths take flight. So somewhere in the DNA of these moths, they just know where to go. Now the other amazing thing, right? So one is we've got to follow our gut here, right? But the other amazing thing is that many of those stars, what do we know about stars? By the time we see their light, a good number of them are no longer around. Right? So the amazing thing about that is that they are being guided by light that was made generations ago. And they are following those stars to make it to their destination. And so when I hear a question about how do I know where to go, I don't necessarily have the grandparents that were religiously affiliated, or I think about my own life. So my grandmother of blessed memory died when she was 102 years old. And the Mediterranean diet, by the way. So she... I used to go clean her apartment once a week when I was a teenager. I did a terrible job. I was not good at cleaning her apartment. But I would take the bus there after school, and I would spend time with her, and she would tell me stories. And I remember she had 5 or 6, maybe 7 framed photos in her apartment, and I would wipe them down every week. And I never asked her, who's in the photos? I knew one had my mom, and one had my uncle, but I didn't know anyone else. So after my father passed away, she and my father had a really close bond. And I came and sat with her. And I said, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but there was this feeling I had when I was sitting Shiva, and I kind of felt like I'm drawn to that, maybe getting back into Jewish life, but I don't know, and how am I going to find out what direction to take? And she picks up this photo, and she says, you know who this is? I said, no. She said, well, who does he look like? Now, it's a picture of a full-grown man, and he's wearing a suit. He's got a great top hat. I don't know where he got the top hat, but it's a great top hat. But if you look close enough, it's a black and white photo, but I looked really closely, and I thought, oh my gosh, I look just like this guy. And my grandmother says, this was my father. And I never told you this, but he was a rabbi. And his father was a rabbi. And his father was a rabbi. And his father was a rabbi. And I never told you this because I didn't want you to feel pressure to take on the family business, right? And she passed away just a couple years after I got ordained, but sharing with her the news that I had somehow tracked down the stars of my ancestors and followed their path to where I was going was the greatest gift that she could have ever given to me. Right? And so that's what I would say to this young person is find your stars and follow them.
Well, I have to say, I really could have kept going. We have dozens of fascinating questions here, true to form. Rabbi Elan Babchuck will be available for book signing on the porch of the Hall of Missions, but I just have one question to close our time together with, and you have to forgive me because it's a bit indulgent. We have had several questions and comments to this effect. But really thinking about what it means to be a rebundled community. And this question asker says, is Chautauqua such a place? I wonder how it would exist without the religion aspect. Thank you, whoever wrote this. You are new, but we hope you come back. What do you think? Could Chautauqua be such a rebundling place?
The easy, short answer is yes, of course, right? This is a place, and I'm 24 hours into this, but I drank whatever Kool-Aid you're serving at breakfast. Okay, let's be clear. It was good. And what is so clear is that this is a community of folks who care for one another, right? This is a community of folks who care about learning, about gaining knowledge, about celebrating ideological differences. Just looking at the list of speakers that you've got, there's not one person repeating the same tropes of another, right? This is a broad, diverse set of speakers. So when I think of rebundling, now, of course, that means we're part of a cycle. So could this be the kind of place that in a time of rebundling, when more and more people are yearning to experience a deep and abiding sense of belonging in something bigger than themselves, I would tell you the same thing that those moths told me, which is to look up. Right? Look, are we not part of something that is so much greater than ourselves here in this community, chasing knowledge and wisdom, supporting one another, staying committed, coming back year after year after year? I would argue that yes, absolutely, this is the kind of place that celebrates the best of what is possible when we choose faith over fear.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking Rabbi Elan Babchuck.